Hey everybody, when I hired out with Southern Pacific Railroad on May 7th, 1979, it was really just another job. I was 19 and I'd worked at a couple of jobs in the oil field and at a carbon plant, and they were all just jobs to me. They were just a way to make money. Uh, After a few years of having been at the railroad, I discovered that I really liked what I did. I enjoyed being a signalman, I enjoyed signal work, and I liked working for Southern Pacific. It was a very familial company. I just liked working there. And I enjoyed working with most of the people who I worked with. In the late 1980s, I was working for a guy named Bill Stocco, and he was my supervisor, and his boss was a guy named Charlie Redmond, and I started talking to them about what I needed to do to move up, to get up into management. And in 1989, Bill retired, and a guy named Roger Rico came to work. And he didn't like me very much, but he still gave me what I thought was decent advice about what to do to move up. And at this time, I was a gang foreman. I had taken the gang foreman job in Palmdale in late 1992. And like I said, Roger wasn't real fond of me, but he didn't seem to have any problems with me moving up if that's what I wanted to do. Charlie Redmond, I got along really well with him, and he gave me a lot of good advice, and I followed that advice, and I remained a foreman to kind of follow that path. And then in 1996, Union Pacific took over. And for all of you who think that the Union Pacific Southern Pacific deal was a merger, it was not. Legally, to keep themselves out of hot water, that's what it was. But it was essentially a hostile takeover. There wasn't much merging about it. Everything became Union Pacific only. People were threatened with discipline if they didn't get Southern Pacific stickers off their trucks. And the signal department, we took a bunch of flack because we didn't get rid of all the Southern Pacific locks. They gave us literally, I think I've talked about this in other videos, thousands and thousands of signal locks to take off the cases and signal heads and everything that needed to be locked up in the signal department, and to take the Southern Pacific locks off because they did say Southern Pacific on them, or SPTCO, and get them replaced with Union Pacific signal locks, and that's it. They said Union Pacific signal on them. But almost immediately, I should go back a few steps. In early 1997, I took the maintenance foreman job, and my boss Roger Rico and I began getting along really well at that time. I don't know what his problem was with gang people, but he really did never like gang people. But anyway, they split the signal department into construction and maintenance. And Roger had been, prior to that, at Southern Pacific. If you were a signal supervisor, you were in charge of construction and maintenance. You were in charge of the gangs and the maintainers. Union Pacific, as I said, didn't work that way. And almost immediately, Charlie Redmond retired. I think he actually went just before the merger. He didn't want anything to do with Union Pacific. We had a diehard company man that I worked for at one time up in Tulare named Greg Smith. He was SP, rah-rah, gung-ho all the way. And when he took over, it was only a couple months later he resigned and went to work somewhere else. He did not like the way UP did things. Roger Rico, who I said I got to be friends with, told me essentially, hey, all that stuff you talked about wanting to do at Southern Pacific, I'd look into that again really closely where Union Pacific is concerned. And I did. And some guys are okay with being treated like that, but Roger wasn't. He hung in there until he retired at the age of 62. I was offered two different times prior to that. I was offered managers' jobs, and I was offered Roger's job, which in the end they ended up not filling. But I was told that if I had wanted that job, they would have filled it and they would have figured something out. But By that time, I had seen what was going on with UP, and I did not want to become part of their management. And not because I didn't want to be a boss anymore. I enjoyed being in charge. I didn't mind being responsible. That was all good with me. But I saw the way they did things with their management, canceling people's vacations. I heard the way on some conference calls that I sat in with Roger, the way these people talked down to their managers. I would have gotten on a plane and flown to wherever some of these guys were and punched them right in the throat. They'd have talked to me that way. So I knew it wasn't for me. Now, fast forward to the current crisis we're in. Union Pacific created their 2020 plan, which I posted a piece on a while back about precision railroading. They initiated that a while back, and they got rid of a lot of management jobs, and a lot of those were upper echelon jobs up in the glass house. But they did get rid of a lot of managers. But now, I don't know if this is directly related to the COVID-19 thing, but what Union Pacific has done now, at least in the signal department, I don't know about all the other departments, but I believe it is system-wide. For the next 4 months, all managers will take 1 week of unpaid vacation. They're taking essentially a 25% pay cut for at least the next 4 months. That's a significant cut. And the managers that would be just above my level, the signal managers, they don't make that much. That's another reason I didn't want to go. I wouldn't have taken a pay cut because I never worked a lot of overtime, but they didn't make much more than I did being a maintenance foreman, and I don't have to put up with anybody's grief as a maintenance foreman. And if I'm going to have to put up with grief like I know they enjoyed handing out, I would have expected to be paid a heck of a lot more. Now, I know that a lot of managers have resigned, especially in the track department. They're having trouble keeping these guys, and some have resigned and gone back down to their tools, and a lot of them resigned and just left the company. So things aren't good in management at Union Pacific. Again, that's like I said, I can't really speak to the exact cause, and probably most of the Class 1 railroads are doing the same thing. Those are not the jobs to have right now. And I would like to also say that it doesn't give me any pleasure to see that happen to these guys. I can only think of a couple of guys in signal management that I really don't care much for. But even still, I don't really wish them any ill will. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not petty. And just because we didn't see eye to eye on things doesn't mean that they deserve to have this kind of crap happen to them. But when it comes to management, they signed on the dotted line. When you become management, you have agreed to be married to the company, and a lot of these guys essentially forfeit their families a great deal of the time. When they say jump, you say how high. If they cancel your vacation, too bad. It doesn't matter if you had reservations or what you've done. If they want you to do something else, that's what you'll do. And that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And they have these staff meetings all over Hell's Half Acre, Omaha, wherever they go do them. And not my thing. I'm glad I didn't do it. But for the guys that have done it and the guys that are happy with it, hey, rock on. As I said, I don't wish those guys any ill will, but they did agree to do this. And I'm glad that I chose not to agree to do it. So that's my take on what's going on at Union Pacific right now as far as the management goes. I don't know how far above that it goes. I don't know if it gets better or worse higher up, because I don't know anyone higher up. So anyhow, that's my take on this whole thing. Just thought I'd share that with you guys. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content. And once again, thanks for the 1,000 subscriptions. We will see you all later. Be well.